Hi, this is Craig Irwin, founder of WomenRetire.com. I read an article today that said that Mexico just raised its minimum wage 15%. 15% sounds like a lot, but what it amounted to is the average Mexican would still be making under $1 an hour, $7 a day. And so that's not a lot of money, for Americans, certainly. But what it told me was, it's certainly understandable why American companies moved to Mexico to manufacture goods, because obviously labor rates are much lower there. If you can pay somebody under $1 an hour to make a car or a computer or any piece of clothing or anything at all, that's pretty low labor rate. So your costs are going to be pretty low, and that'll make you very competitive. Something else I was thinking about was retirement. Mexico seems like a pretty good place to retire. I've been to Mexico quite a few times. I used to live in Arizona, and in Tucson, Arizona. I was working on a PhD there at the University of Arizona. And when I was there, I traveled a lot to Mexico. I traveled from Oklahoma as well, come to think of it. But at any rate, Mexico is a wonderful country, has some problems, but so do we, right? But it would be a very cheap place to retire. A lot of people who live around where I live in Connecticut, they think about retiring maybe in the Carolinas or somewhere south where the cost of living is lower. But if you go south of the border, it's quite a bit lower. So Mexico would be a good place to consider retiring. Obviously, you have to consider all kinds of things like safety, crime rate, and whatnot. But if you just look at the cost of living, Mexico would be a cheap place to retire. If I retired there, I'd be able to have a maid, a butler, a gardener, all kinds of people working for me, and I'd be able to afford to pay them because rent is so cheap. Lots of the costs of living are cheap there. So this is something to consider. If you are thinking about retiring, you might want to figure out how to retire in a cheaper place. Mexico's perhaps a place to consider. And other countries in Central and South America may be worth considering as well, or in Europe. My wife is from Bulgaria, and Bulgaria is a cheap place to retire, as are a number of Eastern European countries, or all Eastern European countries are cheap places to retire for Americans. All right, so this might give you some food for thought. If you're thinking about retiring, think about how you can save money when you retire. And one way to do that is to live in a place where costs are lower than where you're living now. Housing is a big expense, obviously, so that's a good one to look at. But there are all kinds of expenses that have to do with, living. You have to pay insurance, you have to pay for utilities, you have to pay for food, clothing, medical expenses, obviously, dental expenses. So consider all of these and consider whether it makes sense for you to retire in a place where the cost of living is much lower, such as Mexico. All right, food for thought. I'm Craig Irwin, signing off, WomenRetire.com. Bye.